Soumyajit has come? Yeah. Welcome, Soumyajit.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello. Thank
Welcome
you.
to the first session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Students, I'm privileged to have Soumyajit with me today, and it is my real honor to introduce him. He is basically a huge experienced person with into IT, as well as working in various domains, in various companies. Of course, he will give his own explanation from times to come, and he will be basically talking on the subjects which you have chosen. Now, let me tell you, students, there are some questions which you people have asked. You all can hear me, right?
Yes.
You all can hear me. This is your course director talking. You all can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. So,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
so now let me tell you, there was some question given to my experts when they were there for a weekend training that my second line, in fact, not experts, that experts are teaching everything. Yes, experts will teach you everything. You know what experts are doing? Experts are making you interview friendly. So when you are an interview friendly, in an interview process, please understand when you people go to the face interviews, they not necessarily that they'll ask you questions on AI directly, although you have got a certification on AI. Students, they might ask you a question on IoT. They might ask you a question of what is the use of deep learning in AI, or what is the use of machine learning in AI. So these experts are going to give their experiences, and they are going to make you interview friendly. That is the basic job for these experts. So experts are going to cover sessions, not domain centric. They'll be covering sessions from their experience. So at some day, maybe you will see an expert talking on IoT, you will see an expert talking on AI, you will see an expert talking on deep learning, they'll be talking on machine learning, they'll be talking on, let's take maybe cybersecurity, or whatever experiences that they have gained in the garb of this, they will talk to you. So experts are the only level which is going to give you a complete feel of practicality of AI. MD. Practicality of AI. So please understand that. And they are supposed to teach. That's the freeness. The boundary is not there for the experts. Yes, second line there is a boundary. You have a second line person of group of people teaching you AI. There will be a group of teaching you web, Amazon Web Services or cloud computing. There will be a group of people teaching you machine learning. They are subject centric, but when it comes to expert, they can teach you anything. They will basically make you interview friendly. They will make you explain you that how you can really crack the interviews through this knowledge deliverables which you have got. So that is why experts are free to cross boundaries. Experts are free to give their talk about their experience across India. Like yesterday, I was told Sabyasachi had talked to you geopolitical. Now, geopolitical as a course is not there, but he spoke. Similarly, Madam spoke to you about cloud computing. Madam spoke to you about various other things. So they will explain. They will explain their basically the experience in which they come from. Get hold of their experiences. See how they talk. See how they run the PPTs. See how they because they are the experts. So learn from them and try to imbibe your experiences of the expert, and that is the only way you can crack the interviews when I take up the interview diplomacy session in the month of October. Over to you, Soumyajit. I will definitely come in between this. I'll be a part of this session. It's an honor. Again, I'm telling you that I am a part of your session. So I'll also be learning from you. But Soumyajit, as I said, the floor is yours. The topic is yours. They have chosen some subjects, but you can just give the practical and the application part of it along with your PPTs if you have any, and just spend next 2 hours are yours. Thank you very much for coming for an online program in QNX. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. I think this is an honor to be here as well. I'm really excited and looking forward to this session and also interacting with the folks here. I do not have any PPT because I deliberately didn't want to have any PPT because I thought it would be really good to actually speak and also hear questions, be interactive, with the students, because I think that's probably a better way of kind of learning, at least in these sessions. But yes, I mean, If it's required in the future sessions to have certain PPTs or examples, more than happy to do that, but I didn't want to do it today. Today is the first interaction, so I just wanted to.
Today is our introductory session, so go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, well, welcome everybody. If it is possible and if you can be on video, that will be good. It will be good for me to kind of, see the faces behind, but if the bandwidths are an issue, then that's fine, right? But it's always good to have some faces behind with whom I'm talking. So just a quick introduction about myself. I am Soumyajit, and I head the digital marketing operations for ThoughtWorks, which is an IT company. Many of you may have heard about ThoughtWorks, many of you may not have, but then I'm sure we'll talk about it and you'll get to know. My entire experience has primarily been in the IT services industry, technology industry, in digital, and more than anything, it's been on digital marketing. How do you market, or how do you help work closely with the sellers, or how do you work very closely with the demand teams to ensure that whatever the services and offerings that is there, it reaches out to the right audiences. So that's been primarily my area of expertise all over the years. And I thought today, I'll probably talk about a few of these experiences of mine. And we can definitely take more questions. I would really like these sessions to be interactive, because otherwise it just becomes one-way communication, right? So feel free to stop me at any point in time, ask questions, or you can ping in the Zoom chat if that is enabled. I'll be looking at the questions and then probably answering it, right? I think that will be a good way of kind of interaction. So to start with, and at a very high level, while digital, and you would have seen, I think firstly, even before I start there, let me say, I think we all are extremely blessed to be in a country like India right now, which has seen a digital revolution in the last 2 decades, right? I think we are extremely fortunate because we are able to see with our own eyes how our countrymen and how our folks are actually developing digital products and solutions and services, which is not only being adopted by Indians, but also globally, right? I think it's a very good position to be in for us, because it's always good to be in that environment. So my experience with the overall IT and technology has been fantastic. Have really gotten a chance to work with the startups or the specialized industries like banking, then also working very closely with the organizations such as IBM and Accentures and Amazons of the world. And everywhere where I was a part of the team, there was one thing that was very common. You know what? It was passion for technology, passion for digital, passion for doing something which really is meaningful for the users, right? I think that passion is something which drove everybody, and that was common across everywhere that I have worked on, right? So yeah, digital is a vast gamut, right? Typically, when somebody talks about digital, okay, I know a little bit of digital, I know a little bit of social media, I know a little bit of cloud, I know a little bit of AI, I know a little bit of machine learning, all good. But digital is an ecosystem. So remember that whenever you are thinking digital, or whenever you're thinking how would you want to implement this as a part of your learning in the practical world, think of digital as an ecosystem. I think that's one of the key things you should remember, and not in isolation. And that's been my learning as well. When I say digital as an ecosystem, I mean that if you think of as a circle, right? And we all have studied mathematics and geometry. We all know what's a circle. Now, one of the unique features of circle is every dots are connected, and that's how it becomes a circle. So similarly, digital is also a circle. Treat digital as a circle where every dot is connected. For example, you may be an expert in AI, or you may be an expert in machine learning, or you have studied cloud, let's say, for example. But how do you typically bring all these things together to solve a problem, right? That's important. Think of Google. right? Everybody uses Gmail right now. Gmail is essentially an integration of different digital products that Google has to offer. It came first in early 2000s when before Gmail, I think there were a lot of other email services which were very popular, like for example Yahoo or AOL, or many small ones in certain geographies, etc. So when Google brought up Gmail, it was just an email application which was an alternative for the other ones in the market. But if you see the journey, or if you read the journey, you will see that slowly this developed into an entire ecosystem. Now, if you have one Gmail ID, if you open your account with one Gmail ID, that is good enough to run any Google services. Why? Because that's integrated. It is integrated with all the different products of Google. A lot of times, when you open the initial Gmail ID, you see there's a 15 GB free storage that is offered to you. Earlier, it used to be more, but now it's lesser. The reason is because after 15 GB usage of storage, Google will ask you to subscribe, let's say, for example, a monthly or an annual subscription, 100 GB, 200 GB, or 1 TB, etc. Why? Because it's all stored in Google Cloud. The data is stored in Google Cloud. Tomorrow, you may have all your Android phones, and you would have the Google Photos saved there. The Google Photos are also synced up with your Gmail ID and saved on Google Cloud, right? And the best part is as you are using Gmail and other Google products, you will start seeing a lot of personalized messages coming to you, a lot of personalized ads coming to you, a lot of personalized information based on your customized search, because a lot of times we are logged into our phone from Android, a lot of times we are logged into our browsers from Android, the Chrome browser. So the search history that you do, you start getting customized results based on you as an user and your preferences. Now, if you tie back all these different dots and in circle, you have an AI. And AI is like you have an ML, the machine learning. AI and ML is nothing but Google looks at your personalized search results. Google looks at your behavior, and then the system reads and becomes familiar. You have your storage, which is the Google Cloud. You have your Internet of Things, which is all the different services of that Google is offering. And if you tie all these things together, you have a Google Suite, which is called as a G Suite, right? Now that's digital for me. That's the experience. Because tomorrow, if you are, let's say, for example, working for any organization, either Google itself or maybe any Google partner, and you are having this conversation with the client, or even before the client, you may be having certain conversations with during the interview, and the discussion is around how would you sell G Suite to organizations? What's the value? Then you need to articulate it in a story format that connects the dots. And that's the example which I just shared with you, right? Now, you may ask me that is it only Google in the market, or is it something else in the market as well? There is a lot of players in the market. Microsoft, it's a Microsoft suite, right? Apple, it's an Apple suite. These are Amazon itself also has a suite by itself. May not be all the different products, but there's an ecosystem around it. So there's a huge competition in the market, and how do you differentiate one from the other, right? That's what we would need to answer, and you'll be able to answer that only if you start thinking in a way which is different than anybody usual would talk about, like maybe a standalone conversation, or maybe talking about one single product. But if you start talking integrated, then the person sitting across the table would understand that you are not trying to sell only one solution, but you are thinking the bigger picture. You are thinking much more holistically. You are thinking not unidirectionally, but you're trying to bring everything together in the digital ecosystem, and that's how you are showing the value to the customer, right? So that was something which I wanted to share with you, because as you will go through the course, or in the future, the interviews, when you start working, lot of times you will hear this word integrated, you will hear this word ecosystem. These are the two most commonly used words, but a lot of people, they don't understand the meaning of it very clearly, because the examples are not like, broken down, like, in terms of what they would want to do. They only hear the jargons, and then they see, then they get confused in terms of what do we do. Somebody's talking about integrate to me, somebody's talking about ecosystem to me, what do I do, what is my role to play, right? Your role is first to understand this concept. Secondly, whatever your strengths are, right, you need to kind of, focus there, which becomes a part of that ecosystem. I think that's how you deliver the value, right? So this is something which is extremely critical in any digital world, in any technology world, in any organizations, like, that, you work, which offers its products and services and suites, etc. So it's, yeah, so it's very important to kind of, understand this, right? Maybe I will pause for a couple of minutes just to see if you folks have any questions or any thoughts on this before I move on to something else. Would be good to hear something from you folks. Is the mics all unmuted? I mean, you can ask any questions if you have anything.
Sir, let us know more about digital marketing through Facebook, sir.
Sure, that's I'll come to that. But other than that, like, whatever I just explained right now in terms of the ecosystem and the digital suite, do you have any specific questions related to this?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, if not, then that's fine. We'll talk about more examples, and I'll definitely talk about, like, digital marketing through Facebook. So very similar to how Google started its operations. Google basically started in 1998 when Larry Page and Sergey, the two founders, they are like, your dropouts from colleges, and then they opened their garage in like, the Bay Area in US, that is the West Coast, and they started, like, basically with, like, few computers in the garage. That's how it started. Then over the years, 2004, 2006, 2007, 8, etc., they started consolidating their entire, like, technology landscape, which included, like, building on the core, that is the search, then moving into advertisements, then coming up with different products like Google Maps and your Gmail, etc., etc. And then, of course, now we all know, like, how our lives are kind of, dependent on the Google ecosystem, right? Similarly, around 2008 and 9, that point in time, Facebook, like, came up as a alternative to the usual social media channels that were there in the market, right? One of the very earlier social media channels was Orkut, which was again a Google product. Somebody, and Orkut was an engineer himself. He was a German. He used to work in the Google US office, and he actually, like, developed this social media like, platform at that point in time, way back, where people were not even aware too much about social. They didn't even know too much about social. But for some reason, that didn't really take off the way, like, as they, like, they were expecting it. And during 2008 and 9, Facebook, like, came up with, like, an alternate social media channel, and the name Facebook, typically it was conceived as like, you would be socially relatable to one another, right? That's why the face and the book, it's like a memorable book. That's how the origin of the company is. And then Facebook followed suit in terms of like, looking at, like, how typically they can maximize the advertising revenue, how they can bring in the different ads and the concepts, like, which would make reach out to the users, and the revenue model, etc., etc. That's how the concept developed. Now, in the early days of Facebook advertising, the system was not very developed. It was learning, and it was at a very nascent stage, because social media by itself was a very new concept in the for the users were getting warmed up, users were getting used to, users were looking at places where they can go and interact socially with the vast universe of the world, right? So it was quite new. So Facebook used a lot of data, and they use a lot of learning techniques there, which is typically in today's world what we call as, like, machine learning, to understand and study the patterns. Study the patterns of, like, what the users do when they go to the platform, what the users do, like, when they like something or when they comment on something. What is that psychological, like, what goes in a user's psychology when somebody kind of goes ahead and interacts, etc. Right? That's how Facebook started to kind of really browse content. Sorry, are you able to hear me? Sorry, I think I was muted in between. So okay, yeah, so what I was saying is, like, Facebook typically they started studying this. A lot of like, your machine learning, lot of algorithms around artificial intelligence, etc., were started to kind of come into the Facebook marketing, so that the platforms, they were able to study the data and analyze the behavior, right? Then what Facebook did was, Facebook like, took this data and started to create different target segments, and they started to create segments which were behavioral led audiences, which were interest based audiences, which were like, roles led audiences, etc. What I mean by this is, take a step back and think about it. A lot of you, in fact, if not almost everybody, would have your Facebook account. Most likely you would be having it on your phone, and may not be on the on the browser, right? Because phones are kind of easy to kind of use. You would be using your phone for multiple activities. You would be either browsing an email, you would be having some other applications, you would be doing a travel ticket booking, or you would be doing like, some sort of a birthday wish to your friends. We use phones for everything, right? This is nothing but our behavior, what we do as human beings, right? So based on that, you would be the system would be able to understand that if I am exhibiting a particular kind of behavior, right? Maybe I'm buying a lot of travel tickets, maybe I'm trying to like, fly from, let's say, India to abroad. All these different patterns, then my behavioral targeting shows that I am somebody, probably I am interested in travel. Similarly, there are a lot of other behaviors. For example, if you, let's say, watch European football on Facebook Live, or if you watch like, any kind of other sports on Facebook as an app, etc., the system will try to map your behavior and your interests, so that it's a learning for the system, right? So next time, let's say, when you are going to book a train ticket or a flight ticket, right? And you are browsing the history, you're browsing the where do you want to go from place A to place B, or is place C something better? What is the route you would want to take? But at some point in time, you are confused, and you say, okay, fine, you know what? I really don't have time. I don't know right now what to do. Let me take a break and let me come down later, and then kind of do the ticket booking. So you may be just keeping your phone, maybe taking a walk, going and having a tea, coming back later. And then when you log in, you will start seeing some personalized ads coming to you, saying that the prices have dropped by 20%. Or right now, this route is offering you the best economical fare. Or this hotel is giving you the best reservation rates, right? How does the system know about it? Because in the past, the system has browsed certain, like, analyzed certain behavioral patterns, as what you do when you log into a Facebook, or how do you typically interact. Based on that learning, the system now starts throwing you suggestions as to what could be a good way, or what could be a good, like, price point for which you may want to buy a ticket, right? That's the power of a social media tool like Facebook, which is able to analyze your data, your behavior, your insights, your browsing history, and give you those suggestions, right? Now think of it from a company or an advertising point of view. If I am an advertiser, if I am the one who runs a travel business, and I want to kind of send out those relevant information, then all I would need to do is I would log into the social media platform. I would look at the different segments based on users' behavior and data, and then I would create a certain advertising and messaging and push that out. And you as a user, you'd be able to see it, right? So that's Facebook marketing and social media marketing and how this works. Right? Now, there is much more in depth that goes behind the platforms. There's a lot of technology involved. There's a lot of technical people are involved. There's a lot of work that happens, right? But I try to simplify this and letting you know that from a user point of view, how typically Facebook marketing works, how typically a digital marketing works in a scenario like this. So does that answer your question? The one who asked me this about Facebook, do you have any follow-up questions to this?
But whenever we visit other platforms like Amazon, Flipkart, and anything, when we log in, they ask for our account details. So once we visit, then automatically we will get the follow-up offers and all the things in our social media network like Facebook, WhatsApp, and other things. So you cleared my points, sir, here, how they work. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. And also, you kind of bring out a very good point that you mentioned that when you go to any other accounts, like they ask you for your login details, etc. Yes, they do, right? And now with privacy and data becoming such an important aspect, a lot of things are changing as well. Even what was happening 2-3 years back might not be happening right now. The reason is because data and privacy and security becomes a very important aspect of things, right? So even Facebook or any other platforms as well, like the way they would train their system, the way technically in the backend things are going to be done is keeping in mind that it is not intrusive, it is not looking into your personal data, it is not violating your personal rights, right? And then yet how do they show you the advertisements is something what they're going to do it, right? So you will see a lot of these changes coming up in the ecosystem. You will hear a lot about data and privacy and security. You need to keep this in mind as well, because this is something very contemporary. This is something which is futuristic as well. Every solution that organizations are developing right now are based on the data and privacy security checkpoints. It's very, very important that anything in terms of software, anything in terms of the platform or any solutions that is being designed or offering as the user experience in terms of how they would interact, etc., has to privacy compliant. And I think that's very important. So you must keep this in mind as well, when you are designing some thoughts around certain campaigns, or when you are having a conversation around certain sales, etc., which is critical. And the reason why I bring this up now in this conversation is, as sir earlier mentioned, that it might help you in your interview as well. So interview for digital is actually everything is in the mind. The interviewers, all they want to see is they want to see how you are thinking. They want to see whether, given a situation, are you able to think out of the box, or are you able to connect the dots and hence present an answer. None of the answers, unless it is a very technical question, the non-technical rounds, none of the answers are right or wrong. It is all about the approach. Technical is a different thing altogether. Obviously, 2 + 2 has to be 4. It can't be 5, right? You cannot say 5 when it's 2 + 2. So technical rounds are different. But when it comes to the non-technical rounds, I think the key to remember is nothing is a wrong or a right answer, but it's all about whether you are thinking correctly, whether you're able to connect the dots, right? So recently, and I'll give you an example. Recently, in one of the interviews in my organization, we were hiring for a digital a technologist, basically. And we were asking him questions around how would you typically want to approach, or how would you want to figure out a strategy to solve the client's problems. And we just wanted to understand what his thought process were, what he was thinking, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is he able to break down the problem into few parts, then answer each one of the problems, etc. So one thing I realized during that conversation was the candidate was very focused. Of course, he was extremely driven with a lot of passion. He wanted to really prove his point, and he came across somebody if you ask him to do something, he will go and do it and come back and successfully, which is all good, which is required. But when the questions came around the user experience, when the questions came around how would you typically respect, like, a person's privacy, what would be your methods of reaching out to them without breaking the privacy, I think that's where the candidate was not able to think through. Because in the mind, all that the candidate was thinking is like, I have something to sell, I have the technical knowledge, I will go talk to the client and I will go and implement the solution and I will offer the solution. But what he missed out is the bigger picture. He missed out that, like, if he has to offer those kind of solutions and like, expertise, he also needs to understand who is the end user. If the end users are individuals like us, right, we would be very careful in protecting our privacy. So any solution that, as a client or as an organization which is being offered to me, I would be very careful to see whether it is privacy friendly or not, right? So that's where he missed out on that opportunity. So hence I'm letting all you folks know that during lot of interactions or during lot of conversations, think the big picture, think like, from the end user's point of view. Don't just think from self, like, if I were to sell, this is how I will go and sell. Everybody can sell, but how am I selling it, or what am I implementing as a solution? How am I thinking, like, what the end user is going to be impacted or not impacted? I think those are things you need to bring in your overall solution before you kind of reach out with any answers or any proposals that you may have, right? So that's another key takeaway I would like to all of you to kind of remember, because this is something like, which I experienced in different organizations I worked with. My colleagues, my friends, like, I have seen them kind of go through this. I've seen the approach evolve from industry to industry, the company to company. How 10 years back they would approach in a certain way, but then how now they are approaching things keeping the users first as a point, right? So keep in mind that user first is a very critical, like, aspect of any technology marketing or any technology sales or anything that you learn in technology, be it technical, non-technical, that how am I going to solve my users problem? How do I make my users life easy? These are questions. If you are able to answer in your mind, then automatically the solution that you will come up with is going to be user friendly, is going to be something which is very different, is going to be something which is respected by the industry, etc., right? So I think I wanted to leave you with all these thoughts as well, that, like, how you should be probably thinking through, like, when such a scenario kind of comes, right?
Good. I think, Soumyajit, you had really, touched upon the interview angle, which is very good. Students, I would like to also, you to understand that when he's telling what I understood, I want to correct me, Soumyajit, if I've understood it right or not. Students, what I would like you to also understand is, in the interview, it is always the big picture which gets you a job. It is not, who is it? It is not always the focused answers. It is not always the focused answers. It is the big picture which gets you a job. Also, Soumyajit, I will like you to tell them that we have basically the big four, we call it as. We have Facebook, we have LinkedIn, we had the Twitter, and we have the YouTube, right?
Google.
And Google, right? So big four, we call it as big four. What are the different segments they cater to? And because they have a segmentation benefit, we should understand that. And the students of mine should know, although these are four companies, they also master the four segments. So I think you are the best person to explain them, to master the four segment. Apart from that, we have an open source called as a Wikipedia. Okay, we have an open source area which is called as a Wikipedia, and we also have a lot of input from the Google. So what is the difference between an open source and a closed source? When we talk about, if you can just touch upon this in the next 15-20 minutes, I think these people will understand how they do their research, because we have given them a lot of assignments, and these assignments are all research based assignments. So right now I also got a feedback from the second line. They are not very clear how the researches are to be done. So if you can throw a light through your session that what are these research ideas, I think the students will really immense benefit out of it. Please.
Yes, sure. I think that's a very valid point, Dr. Sarit. So open source is something which is probably very broad, because what happens with open source, and I'm talking in a very layman language, I'm not getting into any technical details. With open source, what happens is, like, one has the ability, like, a technologist has the ability to really code, develop, and share, right, in very simple language, whereas a closed source is much more protective. So typically, if you see any progressive technologies or any new age technologies, always would believe in open source, because they would not want to restrict the knowledge and the information sharing with only a certain domain, but they would want to open it up, because tomorrow, like, I may have a great idea, and through that open source I can build a tool, I can probably develop something and I can share. Somebody else may have something even better. So as an end user, then I have 5 different options which I can literally see, and I choose the best, right? So that's typically it. So when you're doing a research per se, and if you want to use Google specifically as a tool, or Wikipedia for that matter, I think both are equally good sources, is what I would say, to find information, right? Wikipedia over the years has really collected data and all the research information in a way which is very user friendly. It really has a lot of, like, sequential, historical, and current data. And then what Wikipedia founders and the Wikipedia teams that they did was, obviously, Google is the most widely searched engine. Like 93% of the searches in the world happens in Google, right? So practically, when we say search, we think it is Google. So Wikipedia also partnered with Google in a way where if you search on a certain topics, then Wikipedia results starts coming up in Google, right? And which is not any paid advertisements, it is pure play organic, right? Now, when you're doing a research and typing something on Google, you will find 2 different kinds of information that you're getting on the homepage. One is on the top of the homepage, you will see, like, very specific messages, which is nothing but paid advertisements, and it will be written as Google Ads, right? These mean that based on your keyword, what you are intending to search for the research, Google realized that there are some advertisements or some advertisers who are offering similar products or information, and hence they're running ads on Google, and hence they match the user intent and that, and then kind of shows you that information on Google. At the same time, if you start scrolling down the page, right, for the same keyword, you will see a lot of Google search results, which is nothing but your organic results, which means, like, Google browsed in a milli-fraction second the entire universe and tried to bring you the right and the closest match possible in terms of what you're looking at, right? That's the intent. Now, at the end of the day, it is still technology. I mean, you may be thinking in a particular way and you may be putting your keywords in a particular way, and Google will try its best to kind of map that and match that, but then it may sometimes throw results which may probably not be relevant for you, but that's fine. But that's the beauty of search anyway, because no 2 people searches in the same manner. If I am, say, for example, I have been given a project on, let's say, like an iPhone, I would be searching in a particular way by using certain keywords. You would be searching using certain different keywords, and no 2 are the same, right? But both of them are correct in their own way. So my recommendation would be, when you are trying to find out information for your research and doing the search, etc., keep trying multiple types of keywords or multiple types of intent that comes to your mind, right? And you, for each one of them, browse through the results, see what is the most closest you can think of. You will start seeing that those relevant information is coming to you. And this way, if you continue for few weeks or few months on different projects that you're working on, Google themselves will also start realizing and understanding a certain pattern, what are you searching on, what is the research topic, and then Google will start showing those results to you. So a lot of times, like, when you search on Google for the first time, you get some results. Second time, the moment you start typing in the search bar, you start seeing recommendations coming through, right? How? Because that's how Google also kind of realizes that this is how you're looking to kind of search or doing some kind of a research, right? That's probably a good way of kind of doing your search and finding out the information and then utilizing it for your research. That's my recommendation. So hopefully I'm able to answer the question.
Soumyajit, what
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have spoken right now, Soumyajit, what you have spoken right now, that you have given an initial, click in, and then you got some information, and the next click in or a third time click in, when you do a similar research, the machine understands. Is it something to do with an inbuilt AI, which
Yes.
the machine has? The machine has an inbuilt AI. So
Yes.
students, please understand, when you are clicking in an information, please understand to this very, very carefully. When you are doing a research and when you are clicking in an information, the minute you click in the one or two time, the third time when you click, the machine actually has understood what you are going to click. And the machine starts giving you the output. So that is the intelligence of AI. You have not fed anything. Through your research, through your click-ins, machine has understood what information you want and machine is giving you back the information. So you have to understand what Soumyajit is explaining you. Soumyajit is trying to tell you right now that when you are doing your research, keep your research on 7 to 8 parameters. And let me tell you, this will help you in your research projects which we have given you. So when we have given you the projects and the case studies, which each one of you are supposed to do, just study the case study, go for a click in into the Google or in the Wikipedia. After the initial click in, get an information. If you go to deep diving, we call it as deep diving of the knowledge. If you want to do deep diving of the knowledge, machine will do it for you. Correct me, Soumyajit.
That's right.
Correct me. Machine will do it for you. You don't have to do so. That is the benefit of an AI. That's a benefit of an AI which you should learn, because in an interview, they are not going to ask you questions, define AI. Let me make it very clear, students, they are not going to ask you questions. Define AI, define IoT, or define cloud. And let me also tell you one more thing. In an interview, whenever you're going to face an interview, suppose you got a chance to get an interview into Amazon. Now, if Amazon, you have got a chance to get an interview, not necessarily you will have a question on cloud. Not necessarily. He might ask you, or they might ask you a question. Okay, now we are into the supply chain. Tell me how your knowledge will add values to my supply chain. Correct me, Soumyajit.
That's
Correct
right.
me. These are the type of questions you are expected. So please understand, whatever you people are learning, let it not be a learning as a project-centric learning or a course-centric learning. When you are going for an interview, always look at the big picture. Give an answer from a big picture. Let's do a small case study for your benefit. We are doing it. We are introducing a case study where Soumyajit is going to ask me some question and I am going to answer Soumyajit as a big picture, and Soumyajit will evaluate me. Can we do this role play, Soumyajit?
Yes, sure. Absolutely.
Perfect. This will be a wonderful thing for the students, because they will have an hybrid role play.
Yeah.
Now, normally what we do in IITs and IIM, we do a non-hybrid role play where a professor and the students, they talk. Now, today, you being the interviewer and I being the interviewee, we will play this role for them to understand under the garb of digital marketing.
Yes.
Under the garb. So over to you, Soumyajit. I am the person on the hot seat. Don't make my life miserable. It's an introductory session. So make my life comfortable. Ask me a plain and simple question so that I can answer. Just on a lighter part. Carry on, Soumyajit. Yeah.
Sure. So I think I'll take a very contemporary topic. And the contemporary topic is sustainability. I think we all really are into sustainability, and every time we open a television, I think that's what we keep hearing, like sustainable, renewable energy, etc. Right?
Yeah, renewable energy. Yes.
So let's say, for example, with all these, the different wars, the Russia, Ukraine, and like the recession, which is coming through, and it's a prediction, right? More and more there's going to be reliant on sustainable energy and renewable energy for economies of the world to survive, to kind of live their lives. So if you were a technologist and you were tasked to scale and build something based on a sustainable, theme or a topic, how would you typically go about implementing them so that, it helps any particular economy?
Wonderful. So how I understand, since you took up the Ukraine and Russia war, now first, if I am a technologist, I am going to first try to understand what is the outcome or what is the genesis of this war.
Yeah.
Okay, what are the things which is going to be in short supply? What are the things which is going to be in abundant? So initially what I feel is, in this war, which has continued for 4.5 months, the things which has been in abundant is the arms.
Yeah.
So instantly what I feel as a student, I will say the arms race of the developed and the non-developed economy will only go up. Now, when we say the arms race, we have a direct connection of AI and IoT. Now, I'm going to connect the AI and the IoT into the arms race. How? Because most of the ammunitions, most of the missile system work on an AI and IoT. Correct me, sir.
Yeah.
If I now when I am going to come up with these missiles, I am going to really re-equip as a technologist. I am going to re-equip my domains of IoT and AI and the machine learning part, and put it in today's technology and future technology, so that my missile operation increases. And that is what Putin is telling day by day. If you look at the news, sir, if I may say, Putin always says that I am going to come up with the ICBMs. And what is these ICBMs? Intercontinental ballistic missiles. So this is, I think, is one take in the war of, as far as the Ukraine and Russia is concerned, from the arms industry point of view.
Yeah.
Now let me take one more industry, which is the logistics part of the industry, or the petroleum part.
Yeah.
Now there is a huge, you can say, shortage right now in the wheat market as well as in the oil market. Now what has happened? Russia has told very clearly, although there is a sanction being levied on Russia, but Russia is very clear that I am going to do business as usual. And Russia is doing business as usual with a lot of continents, which is not coming in line with Biden. Now, please understand why I'm giving you these examples, students. Although we are in a session of AI, although we are in a session of IoT or cloud, but please understand, when there is a question of export and import, your logistic cost basically comes down if your AI dominated logistics are being improved. Now I'm telling you this because the routes are the air routes, the routes are the sea routes, and the routes are the land routes. Please understand, there are some routes which is coming under sanction, a no-fly zone. Then what do? How will the export takes place? Now AI is going to give you that information. IoT, you will get that information, that these are the available alternative sources, available alternative paths which is available, on which if you travel, you will still cut on your logistic cost, and hence you will not create an inflationary measure. Correct me, Soumyajit, is my answer is right or wrong?
Right.
I have covered two things. One is an arm industry, and I have covered the logistics part. Again, the use of whatever they are learning, AI, IoT, cloud, all three taken into consideration. Students, this, what Soumyajit was trying to tell you all this while is, this is how you have to answer in the interview. Please understand, this is how you will answer in the interview. You will not answer. Look at the question he asked you. Expect these type of questions in the interview. They will not ask you questions on define. He never asked a question on AI. He asked me a situation, how as a student, as a technologist, you are going to leverage out of it. So this is going to be your answer. Is the role play okay, Soumyajit?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, thank you, sir, for suggesting and answering it such interestingly. I was listening to it as well. So I think the biggest takeaway from sir's answer, and also for all of you, would be, when I asked the question, sir broke down the question into two different parts. First, he analyzed it into a problem statement. Then he came back to tell us that if this is the problem statement, then there are probably two ways of looking at it. It could have been 3-4 ways, whatever it is, and nothing is right or wrong there, right? But he broke it up from thinking from an industry which is an arms industry. He talked about a logistics industry, and That's how you break down the problem. That's how you connect the dots. When I started the session, I was talking about connecting the dots, right?
Absolutely.
This is an example of connecting the dots. Like, how the conversation about a Russia-Ukraine war can have a connecting dots with an AI, with the logistics. Like, the airlines industry or the shipping industry example that Sir mentioned is exactly how the logistics industry works. They look at a machine, system generated, which route is going to be cheaper, or at this point in time, what is the weather, what is going to be if I normally go from point A to point B in 9 hours. If I'm able to cover it in 8.5 hours or 8.3 hours, then I save 30 minutes, which means I'm also saving my fuel cost. So which means, maybe if I take the route A to C, there is no bad weather and my flight is able to kind of go much more faster because the weather resistance is not going to be there, which means I'm improving upon my fuel efficiency, right? This is something that is going to be given to you by a machine learning and IoT and your AI, all these so implementation of what you study and what you actually see happening, that's important, right? My very strong advice to you would be, and this is something which I personally follow. I listen to news. I read newspapers. I of course read news in my phone and other digital mediums as well. But whenever I try to understand what's happening economically or politically or anything for that matter, I try to understand what's the root cause, what is causing this and how is it impacting the larger world. Only then I'll be able to probably think of some solutions, be it technologically or be it otherwise. I'll still be able to connect those dots, right? So it might be a good exercise for all of you to do, whenever you're listening to any news, etc. In the future, try to understand the root of it. Try to even within the news channels or the programs, also try to listen to those programs where they give you a breakup of the analysis. Like there are a lot of programs where the news anchor is able to give you the breakup of the analysis, shows you the pros and the cons of what's happening and where is the impact and how that's going to be, right? So this will help you to think. Like thinking is important, right? Thinking is important. It's not only about learning the theory or learning how do you kind of do it, but most important thing is thinking, because the moment you're able to think, you are able to articulate, you're able to go out of your comfort zone and kind of talk through. And again, as I said, nothing is a right or a wrong answer. It's all about your thinking. It's all about how you would want to apply. As an interviewer, myself, or I've seen my other colleagues, we always try to look for something which is an interesting conversation, something where I'm able to see if the candidate sitting across to me is able to come up with something really different and is able to connect the dots, like basically ability to think on their feet, right? What is the cognitive ability they're able to kind of bring through during the conversations. So the evaluation is not based on whether you're getting 100 out of 100 or 90 out of 100. No, the evaluation is based on whether you're able to think, because tomorrow, if you're working in an organization, you will be thrown in these kind of challenges. You'll be put together in projects. You'll be put together in teams where you will have to solve for these problems. So if your ability to think is not there, then that becomes a challenge, right? And a lot of times, I think maybe this is also to do with how we study during our school days and college days, etc. We are a lot of times taught to literally go one directional. Like this is the syllabus, these are the books, this is what the professor has kind of talk to us in terms of the notes. This is my exam questions, 10 questions, and I will answer, I'll get the marks, and I will come out, right? That's partly okay, but a larger holistic growth of an individual is about, if you are able to, again, I'll repeat my words, if you're able to connect what's really happening to what you are learning. I think that's important. So do not be afraid, and or in your mind, don't be scared. Oh, you know what? I don't know whether this answer is right or wrong. Nothing is right or wrong. You say, you be confident enough, and you go and articulate it. Right? I think it will be good. So that's my advice.
Soumyajit, I'll still go back to my question. Question now. What is the segmentation philosophy of Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the Google? If you can explain the segmentation philosophy,
Yeah.
That will be a great help to these students, because these students are going through these various, inputs from the various channels. But they really, maybe, if you can tell them that which area, which point is going to give them an answer, how to really make use of these four, I think that will be a great help to them.
Yeah,
Why don't
sure.
you throw a light on that?
No,
Yeah.
sure, absolutely, absolutely. Firstly, I think one should look at all of these four, the big fours together, in the sense like they're part of the same bucket or ecosystem. Each one has its own USP, right? The way each platform they works, they has its own USP. For example, a Facebook is extremely powerful because the way they segment the audiences is purely based on user behavior. It is
Wonderful.
pure and play user behavior. Why?
Mm.
Because 90% of the users of Facebook are on mobile, either an Android or an Apple. Let's say more of an Android, because Android policies and features are much more easier than, let's say, for example, Apple ecosystem. So think about it. What all not we do using our phone? We exhibit all possible behaviors, starting from wishing a birthday to buying tickets to calling somebody or watching movie, everything. So in a day, in a week, in a month, we exhibit a lot of our behavioral patterns, right, which is kind of stored and trained in the system, with all these learnings that happens, right? So Facebook's biggest segmentation strength is breaking it down by audience behavior. So whenever you are using Facebook for anything to do with either a paid advertisements or a research, or even thinking of how do you build a user profile, think of behavior. Like, what if one person who is, let's say, exhibiting certain behavior may do in a day-to-day activity, right? That's important. That's a strength. LinkedIn, on the other hand, is about behavior, yes, for sure, but LinkedIn is also a lot about understanding the profiles of the users, because primarily the USP of LinkedIn is it's a professional network, right? We all are on LinkedIn. Primarily it's a professional network, but at the same time it's a social media, so even a platform where professionals are kind of interacting. That's the overall USP, right? So LinkedIn's segmentation is a lot based on what kind of roles do you play, what kind of organizations do you work, what kind of seniority, you are there in the organization, etc. So LinkedIn's segmentation will give you, like, from an audience pool, if you need to understand X percentage are senior VPs or X percentage are managers, right? And if they are so, then what is it that they typically would be behaviorally showing? Now imagine, you get this data from LinkedIn and Facebook both. Like, Facebook gives you behavioral data, LinkedIn gives you behavior plus your roles data. Now let's say you are doing a project where you have 50% of your target audiences as, let's say, managers, 20% as C-suite level audiences who are very seniors in their organization, and the others are in the mid-level. Now, while they are present on LinkedIn, it's a professional network, that's fine, but at the end of the day, they're all human beings too. So the same person who is present on LinkedIn will also be present most likely on a Facebook in his personal time or in her personal time. So just because I am a manager or just because I am a senior vice president, it doesn't mean that I will not be, I'm not a a human being, or I don't have my
All the
personal time,
experts are talking
right?
different.
So yeah, so which means in your project, when you're doing the research, you combine these two together, then you see the powerful. Then you know that 50% of my target audience are managers who are also maybe interested in XYZ. Where do you get that interest XYZ? You get it from Facebook. But the original data segmentation, you got it from LinkedIn, right? So this is how you marry the two things together, right? And then comes search, which is probably in the Google ecosystem. Now, search is extremely powerful because it is high on intent. You search only when you want to search. Nobody forces you to search. And or unless, of course, there is always some sort of a people who are having some free time, they may be doing something, but the percentage is less. But typically, from a user behavior, you will search only if you want to search, and that is high on intent because you want to find that information that point in time, right? So then from your research of the user behaviors, like like LinkedIn and Facebook, and then going to search will segment it based on high user intent. Users who are really high, and when I say high, I mean high intent, and wanting to find information which is as close and accurate as possible. So that is Google's USP. So high intent segmentation, right? Now you club all the things together, and then you see the power of digital. Like, for one set of audiences, you get a certain data from a certain platform, you study their behavioral interests from something else, and out of that you also kind of measure that, like, how many of these are actually going to be probably searching on certain terms, right? All this data is available. Then you have a final use, what we in digital marketing language called as the user persona or the user personal, like, you create that framework, and then you kind of go about doing your research. You will find that your answers or your findings are much more stronger rather than like just doing anything one, right? So that's how typically segmentation works across all these platforms.
Soumyajit, normally we have a system here in Kionix. Whenever we are going through these training sessions, we give them assignments. So I think what I have understood from the past 1 hour that you are talking, the best assignment which you can give them from today's session is read across some of the profiles. Read across some of the profiles in Facebook, read across some of the profiles in LinkedIn, and then you try to analyze those profiles through a search-based operation and give their inputs. Give their inputs. What do you think about their profile? That means I am making them a pseudo vice president and president. All the students will take up a role of a pseudo vice president and president. They will choose 3 to 4 profiles. They will study the profile through the LinkedIn. Then they will see their other behavior process in the Facebook, the same profiles. And then through the Google, they will do some research of their background and form an opinion what sort of a behavior these 4 profiles come to. So form an impression that whether they are successful or what they are going to change in their life process. Let it be a group assignment. If not an individual, let me a group assignment from your side. And they write this assignment and send it to you for you to evaluate basically what is their evaluation process of this media in the technological platform. What do you say about this assignment?
No, sure. Very that's a great idea. I was thinking something very similar, if not the same. I was also
you can always say what you were thinking.
Yeah, I was also thinking something very similar. I was thinking I think one of the very key components of any work that we do or the students would do in the future is keeping the end user in mind. If what is the end user wanting to do, how do I solve the problem for the end user? That is the goal of any organization, right? So I was wanting them to do a user persona analysis, which is exactly what you mentioned, because a user persona analysis will happen only if you do the segmentation across all these, right? So I think both of us are thinking the same, and I think this could be a group exercise. I don't know how many students are there and how we'll form the group.
I'll tell you there. I'll just tell you a bit of a background, Soumyajit, since you are here for the introductory session. We have divided this into 16 groups. Okay. We have divided each experts are giving assignments, and there are 16 groups. 16 groups divided into 14 franchises. Okay. Now each 16 group of students, they are basically controlled by one second line faculty, one third line faculty who is basically doing the practical with them, and each center has 2 faculties of their own. These 4 people are their mentors,
right,
to these 10 students. Okay. And there are 16 groups. So whatever projects and assignments are happening, it is a group assignment and a group project. So right now they are supposed to do a project synopsis in the first week of August. So before the project synopsis, there are various assignments we are giving them. Those assignments will be evaluated. Your today user, what is the name which you give?
User persona analysis.
User persona analysis is your project, your assignment given to the students. So as we have explained to you, students, please go through first the LinkedIn, select 3 to 4 profiles from the LinkedIn, then study about the behavior aspect in the Facebook, and then do a research of those profiles, maybe on a Wikipedia open source or a closed source, and create a write-up for them. Is the assignment clear?
Yeah.
Is the assignment clear? Yes or no? Even the second line and the third line can also
Yes, sir.
ask. Answer.
Yes, sir. It is clear.
Assignment clear. There's a unique assignment. Now, slowly, let me tell you, students, your teachings are going to go to the next level. Initial 15 days, we gave an interview. Now, Soumyajit, although he is in his first session today, but he has put up a very interesting thing, that how a digital space can make you so strong that you can crack the interview like hell. The best of the companies are going to hire you if you are very strong on a bigger picture of digital analysis. That is what Soumyajit has covered in today's introductory session. Correct me, Soumyajit.
Yeah.
What my understanding of your this is
Absolutely.
basically covering interview.
Yeah.
That's it. And when he's talking about interview, he is told one thing very clearly. You are, although there will be a directed questions asked to you, but when you answer, you have to give a big picture. When you give a big picture, then only the person sitting on the other side forms an opinion that yes, you are not only supposed to be taken for this particular job, but I can also use you for some other job. Because you have already got this experience. You have already got a digital space experience. So I can use this. Understand one thing, student, whenever you are going for an interview, and if I have decided to pay you 20,000 rupees or 25,000 rupees, correct me, Soumyajit, since you are taking an interview daily for your own company as well as other companies. So what I'm going to see in those 20 minutes is that whether by taking you in the system, I get a value worth 2.5 lakhs out of you or not.
Yes.
10 times minimum. If you are able to convince me that in the next 15 minutes by your answer, you are in my company, otherwise you are rejected.
Yeah.
So if you are expecting 50,000 or if you are expecting a lakh, like my IIM and IIT students, like Soumyajit, when he was a student, he basically answered questions and he demanded 2.5 lakh salary as as a starting, but he could convince the interviewers that if he is taken into the company, he will bring minimum 50 lakhs worth of business monthly. If this you can convince to the interview, you got a job. If this you cannot convince, you will not get a job. Please understand. It's a double-edged sword. The salary is a double-edged sword. So if I decide to give you 20,000, in those 20 minutes, you have to explain me and you have to convince me that you will bring business worth 2 lakh rupees by your answer. Correct me, Soumyajit. Is it not the evaluation which you normally do in an interview process?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is the mindset, right? Understanding, like, what kind of mindset you have, which will bring value to the organization. Like, why should I hire you? And probably not person A or person B, right? Honestly, sometimes there is very little to choose from the few people, but typically, like, it's the mindset which you bring onto the table. If you have a growth mindset, if you have, like, a mindset which is positive, if you know how to maneuver things, and by the way, you will not be perfect. You will not be perfect during the interview. You will not be perfect in day one, or maybe even in few months. That's why there is an induction training. That's why there is a coaching. That's why there is a mentoring. But the hiring is based on the potential, like, what you are bringing onto the table. Like, what is the spark that you have, or what is the caliber that you have, right? And that is something I think best understood, like, when you're actually having that interaction and you are able to think on the feet. See, half an hour interview or 45 minutes interview, you cannot judge a person completely. But what you can definitely judge is if the person has the ability to think or not think, right? That's the big takeaway, is what I would say.
Wonderful. Students, any questions? Faculties, any question before he takes the next part? Any questions? Because we are going to start the role play. When is the role play? Yeah, just a minute. When is the role play? Today we can have the role play.
Yes, so by this month, and actually, we have.
So month end we won't be. We will play a role play today and maybe one in Anil Yera's class. Okay. Yeah. So student, any questions? Okay. Shweta has a question. Go ahead, Shweta.
So, actually, my question is, whenever we try to download the apps, it'll ask for the terms and conditions. But unless and until we accept it, we'll not be able to proceed with that app. So, how can we secure our device by that, sir? Like it'll ask for your contacts, your location, every details it'll ask for.
Yeah.
But I still want to use that app and secure my device. How can I do that?
She's thinking about his own security.
Yeah, I think this is a great question, and I think the world is struggling with this, Shweta, not only you.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
because I think this is getting into a stage where soon the technologies have to kind of do something about it. How do we download apps without accepting those terms and conditions, etc. So right now, honestly, there is no direct answer, because in Android, it's still as it is, right? But very soon probably they will come and change it. But in Apple, they have much more stricter security features. So the moment when you download the app, it gives you a pop-up, says that do you want to get push notifications, or do you want to get XYZ, right? And you can say no to it. So hence Apple is much more secure. So Apple has cracked it to quite a bit, but Android, I think, has to go a long way. And because of this, I think the Apple ecosystem is also stronger. So once you start using iPhone, once you start using Mac, people typically don't move out of it, because they become very comfortable. And that's the USP, right? So I don't know, Shweta, on what do you use, Android or Apple? But then if you're an Android user, maybe you'll have to wait for some more time. But if you're an Apple user, then it is easier.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any other question, please, before we move to the hard part? Any question? Any question?
Posted in the chat.
Okay, chat bot. Let us see the chat bot. What is posted in the chat bot? Okay, let me read it out. Open the chat bot. So I'll put it to Soumyajit. Okay, how hackers can hack the data? What do they use? Any coding or any virus? This is the first given by Halima of Raichur. How hackers, Soumyajit, can hack the data? What do they use, and any coding or any virus? Let me tell you, Soumyajit is not an hacker. So I really don't know how he will answer, but okay, since you have asked a question, I give this question to Soumyajit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a technical person or a hacker, but what I understand is typically it is coding. The hackers, they are supposed to be extra geniuses than the average population, right? And then they code and they drop the code. In the technical language, it is called dropping, right? They dropped the code in a way which then acts as a virus. So virus is not something which is nobody codes a virus, but the moment the way the code is done, and which is kind of dropped or shared, maybe through the different phishing exercises or unsolicited emails that come to your inbox, so there are various of those phishing stuff, right? Which people fall prey to, and the moment you click on it, and then that code kind of explodes, and then that acts as a virus, right? So this is typically how the hackers, they kind of work.
Next question. Next question is from next question is Ramesh Sugar. His take as renewable energy. My thinking question is as we convert the wind energy to electrical energy, is it possible in cars and other vehicles by fixing the fans that convert electrical energy to store in battery, then continue to move the car without petrol or need to charge battery again and again?
Yes, I also mentioned in the chat, good point, Ramesh. So I think, again, I'm not a technical engineer, so I will not be able to give you the engineering answer. But I think I think the world is doing something like this. So I think there's a lot of projects, across the world, across the globe, where they are trying to kind of convert one energy into the other format. and then see like, what's possible, what's not possible. So a lot of the connected cards, like, if you do IoT, I think connected cards is a very important concept. And I'm sure in your technical classes, you will learn about connected cards, right? Connected cards are nothing but something very similar, right? Where like
incidentally, Ramesh is teaching IoT only. That is why he has given this question. I'm
okay. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
fine, great. So
Yeah.
I think probably I'm on the right thing, right? So probably like, in this space, I think there's a possibility that like, while this can be one can be converted into the other forms of energy, and then how do we see if there is synchronization, right? Again, as I said, like, I'm not an engineer, so I can't be able to give you the
No,
exact answer,
I think
but,
Ramesh, I have a take here. You must have seen we are basically using in the road manufacturing. I call it always road manufacturing. We initially started with some bitumen, right? From bitumen, we came to cement. Now we are talking about ethanol. Now, these are all energy changes which we are overcoming, we are implementing. So with ethanol, they are telling that they are going to make the roads equivalently good. And the cost of using these energy is much, much lower than the bitumen and the cement, which we are doing as white toppings. So this is the overall change which is happening in technology when it comes to road making or, road manufacturing this. Yeah, carry on. Which is the next question?
I think Wajida is asking a question which says, sir, when we play a video on YouTube, sometimes it will ask us to take surveys. Is this also comes under digital marketing? Yes, it does. So surveys are a very important concept of digital marketing, where one organization wants to learn how the users are experiencing, right? And that's all about survey. So the project which we talked about, like, user persona analysis, it's all goes into understanding what the user experience of the users are, right? So hence surveys becomes important, and because it is coming to YouTube, it is a digital platform, and hence it's a part of digital marketing.
Any other question? Any other question?
Yes, sir.
No question? Yeah, please go ahead.
So how to do digital marketing for free, and and how can we begin the digital marketing?
You mean to say how do you study for free, or how do you market?
No, how to start digital marketing for free? Like, let's say if I want to set up my own startup or my own business, so how can I start that through digital marketing?
Okay, so the honest answer is there is no free lunch. So you cannot really, so you cannot really start anything for free as such. There has to be some sort of investment. The investment can be XYZ, which is different, but there has to be something, right? However, having said that, there are options in digital marketing which doesn't require your money. For example, if you do an organic social media, that doesn't cost you money. If you build your website and your content where your search engine optimizations is kind of doing well and kind of ranks when somebody searches, that is organic. So that doesn't really require money, so you can do that for free. But to do that, you can't start it from day one. There has to be some amount of paid, that an investment that is required, which builds your brand, builds the entire startup's brand and ecosystem. And then over the longer run, you may want to kind of explore these free options as well. But it's not about starting free. It's about starting with an investment and then leveraging the users, and then making sure that who are organically coming up because they already know your brand, right? It's the other way around.
And sir, what would be the skill set that would be required for digital marketing? Any skill set specifically?
Yes, I think I would say the biggest skill set that is required is understanding content, understanding platforms such as your social media, your Googles of the world, and also your display advertising, where typically you do your advertising, basically like the banners and the videos and etc. and stuff like that, right? I think these are the 4 things which is definitely going to be important as a starting point. As you grow in, then the skill sets also kind of varied skill sets are also present, right? But these are an absolute basics.
Yeah, students, let me tell you, digital marketing is basically an output process, or is an ultimate outcome of what all you are learning. Let me tell you that. Now you are learning coding, you are learning programming, you are learning AI, you are learning IoT, you are learning web development. Now, digital marketing is basically a huge application process, which is an outcome of this learning. So if you learn these subjects properly, you will be a very, very effective digital marketer, because in digital marketing, your content is very, very important. You have to tell something in a very, very crisp and a shortened format, but which can get you a maximum reach. If the reach is small, if the reach is less, and your content is big, you are not and your costing, as somebody said, anyway, nothing will come free, but your cost reduction will be basically dependent on how you use technology. The more effective you use technology, less is your cost. Correct me, Soumyajit, if my understanding is right.
That's right. That's right. The more efficient use of technology, you will kind of minimize your cost, of course.
Yeah.
And that's the cost optimization part of it.
Correct.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So my name is Sriram Kamath from Infotech, Shashi Infotech, Kundapura. So I have a doubt, sir.
Yes, please ask.
Sir, when we use Google, or when we chat in WhatsApp, if we, like example, if we search for anything about camera or buying something, so instantly the next day in YouTube or Instagram, we see more ads about the same specific item which I was searching, or what I was talking or chatting. So is Google or some companies which are targeting our data? What about our privacy and data security, sir?
Absolutely. Again, great question, because this is something which is, again, the world is struggling with. I think European Union is much more stricter, but in countries like India, where unfortunately we do not have very stricter rules yet, rules are going to be kind of made, and that's what our information and the minister is kind of working on this big project. But till the time, I think there is going to be this challenge. But to your point, yes, there is a challenge in terms of data privacy and security, in terms of how the user, all these companies are trying to target users. And because of this hot topic, the Googles and Facebooks of the world are changing a lot of algorithm in their backend. I think in the next 1.5 year, you will see a lot of change that has happened, wherein unless the user is actually consenting on their own that I would want to receive the information, or I am accepting to the cookie policies, which is present on the websites, etc., nothing is going to be shown to you, right? So companies are working towards that, but it's a process. And also, as I said, there are a lot of legal loopholes in certain countries like India. There is no clearly defined digital rules, versus continents like Europe, where all the countries in European Union have a much more stricter rule. So this kind of things doesn't really work there, right? So yeah, so we'll have to wait for the time, but then I think this is something which is in the way. It's coming.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other question before Soumyajit moves forward?
I see one more question
yes,
in the chat. Yeah, go ahead, Vaishali.
Yeah.
So how can we target a specific user base?
Specific user base. So I think you will get the answers best when you do the user persona analysis, because that is where you will actually go through the drill of understanding who the users are, what their behavior is, what do they do, what do they consume online,
And they're doing these assignments,
and you will be able to. But in
second line, they have to send a report.
Yeah, but in short, to answer your question, is typically first thing when you want to target an user, you need to understand who you want to target. Say for example, if you're selling, again I'll take an example of iPhone, right? So if you're an organization if you're Apple and you want to sell iPhone, then who would you target? What is the demographics? What is the age group? What is the income? What is their interest? Where do they kind of sit digitally, and how do you analyze their persona, right? So that is how you get the user detail, and then you target them through the different options available in the platforms. So your exercise of user persona analysis will actually give you a lot of this answer, right?
Sir,
So the assignment which you are doing is answering it. Okay, carry on.
Yeah, so one last question. So, sir, can only website do all the digital marketing, or do we need to adapt some other ways or some other mediums for that, for the digital marketing?
Website is just one of the medium.
One
right?
means.
Yes, website is, let's say, for example, like, treat your website as a temple, let's say, right? So what do we do in a temple? Like, we have different devotees, temple, church, mosque, whatever you want to call them. We have different devotees. We come, we pray, but we see everything there. That is the one-stop solution or one-stop place where you have all your content, right? And it is digital, hence its website. But how do you bring people to the website? Those are your different platforms and channels. So you will have to use all those different platforms and channels, target the users based on the user persona analysis, reach out to them, let them interact, let them come to your website, and then, like, either sign up or buy or pay or whatever that is, right? That's the flow.
Thank you, sir.
And
Yeah, somebody else is talking.
There's one more question I see here in the chat. It says, what is the difference between branding and digital marketing? I think digital marketing is an enabler. It enables you to brand. Branding is a goal which, like, every organization will have, right? But every organization may need not have digital marketing. And one of the best examples of this I can talk to you about is, like, Coca-Cola. The Coca-Cola brand, which we all know probably is the world's most popular and #1 brand. When it started, digital marketing didn't exist. It was all traditional marketing through which they built their branding. Now, of course, Coke also kind of has a digital marketing team, but that is only after so many years, right? So branding is something which is, like, every organization would want users to know their brand. Digital marketing is just one enabler which helps in branding, but digital marketing also helps you to do many other things as well. So it's an enabler. That's the difference. So the other question which says from Wajida is, sir, how SEO works? I want to know more on this. I can definitely tell you more on SEO, but maybe not in today's class, because that probably requires a very dedicated session. But I think, Sarit sir, if the question is, if the students are wanting to know something like this, maybe we can.
You can take it up in the next session, sir. You can take it up in the next session.
Next or whenever we can do something on those.
Whenever. You can keep it on your this, and as a recording, you can take it up.
Yes, sure. I'm noting.
Because SEO, I know SEO cannot be answered in next 20 minutes because he has another 20 minutes with us. So 2025, this is not a short. SEO is something different, but definitely it's a very strong tool. I want students to know that, because if you can do an effective SEO, I can tell you the outcome of an SEO is, even if you are not known, but see, let me tell you one thing. In front of Soumyajit, who is the doyen in digital marketing or a don of digital marketing, I can tell you one thing. You might not be a known company, but this SEO is a tool which can make you known in the first 3. Although you might not be there in the last 50 also. So this is a very deceptive tool, but then many of the people, many of the companies are using it very effectively to come in the top 10. Like, for example, if you look at there are some of the evaluators, Soumyajit, I was going through the evaluation of the various education institutions, and you'll be surprised to know that in one of the, write-ups I saw, I think it was India Today or somewhere, they rated your VIT higher than IIT Delhi. So that is something which is not wrong. Let me tell you that, because let me tell you, you cannot say something wrong in the media. But what did they take? They took one of the criteria of VIT vis-a-vis IIT Delhi.
Yes.
What did they take? VIT criteria they took as their international collaborations and their international placement vis-a-vis IIT Delhi.
Yep.
So definitely IIT Delhi is low on the international placements, because most of the output happens in best of the Indian companies. They join the international placement percentage is low. Whereas in VIT, about 50 students placed in the international companies, they rated themselves high. So on that parameter, they rated them on a higher. So this SEO thing, which is search engine optimization, is a brilliant tool. Although it doesn't tell you on what point you are rated, but it can really give a very deceptive outcome. So that is a full-blown session which students, I think Soumyajit will take, not in the next 15-20 minutes. I will also not like him to do any shortcuts. So give him space, give him time. He'll definitely come back to you on this. Yes, next.
There is another question which says, are digital marketing professionals paid more than a regular employee? Right? Answer is yes and no, both. It depends on with who you are comparing, right? If you are comparing yourself with maybe a traditional marketer, then probably the answer is yes, because in today's digital world, the demand for digital is more, and if you have the skill sets, you will be paid more. But if you're comparing yourselves with a completely different, a benchmark altogether, maybe an engineer or maybe a product manager, then I think it depends on at what stage of your career journey you are. Maybe a digital marketer gets more than a product manager, or maybe they don't. It all depends, right? But in the marketing world, if you are a digital marketer, then chances are very high that you'll be get paid quite well based on your skill sets, because that is the demand. So a good quality digital marketer will always get paid more.
Another thing I would like to add, gone? Can you hear me?
No, we can hear you.
Yeah, no, you're sharing something?
No, I'm not sharing anything.
Achha. Okay. Another thing which I would like to add on here is, when you are growing up the ladder, correct me, Soumyajit, if I'm right. When you're growing up the ladder, when I say growing up the ladder, that is from the operative level to a tactical level, and tactical level to a strategic level. Now, at a strategic level, you have to have both the skill sets, the traditional skill set as well as the digital skill set. At a tactical level, that is the middle level management, you have maybe a 60% on the traditional level, but 40% on the digital level. So understand one thing, and as times go by, future, when you people go 3 years, 4 years down the line in future, your percentage of digital skill set has to grow than your traditional skill set. That is why you are learning these courses. Why we are telling you that you are very lucky to learn these courses is because in future, you have to, in any of the industries, you have the application of AI, you have an application of IoT, you have an application of developing a web. And you know what? If there are web developers under you, you have to understand. First of all, you have to understand. Otherwise, any web developer will, develop one basic website and charge you 3 lakhs and run away from you. Whereas if you are pretty clear about these, inputs, these technologies, you will know the exact pricing and you will not be hoodwinked. Correct me, Soumyajit.
Yeah.
This is where I think in future, why you have to learn all this. Yes, Soumyajit, you can answer.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. I agree, because I think it's very important to understand. I think, your example of a web development is a very important example, because that is where a lot of the folks who doesn't understand, as a marketer, the developer probably charges a huge exorbitant amount and goes away. So as a digital marketer, you need not be an expert web developer, but what you need to know is what are the 5 components that goes into making it, so that you can ask the right questions. I think asking the right questions is important if you are evaluating such vendors, etc., and stuff like that. So yeah, so I think that's
another thing is ERP. Now, ERP is going to be the future of all work processes. Now, if you know these subjects, that is one big tool where you can be a software developer, entry-level software developer, and you can at least get a job at the operative level. So please understand, today's session is basically, we are explaining you the future and explaining you also that how you can really make best use of the knowledge which you are gaining through these sessions. Okay, that is the app. Today, if you ask me, today's class is completely an application oriented class. Till now, you were having a class where a lot of theories were given to you by the expert. I'm very happy that Soumyajit has come and really, titillate us with a lot of application oriented stuff, so that you people should start thinking that tomorrow, if you have to go for a job, what exactly is the interviewer looking inside you? And to give you more insight in that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there is a simulation expert session which is on last week of this month, but 27th, I don't know who is going to take it. That Shweta and Ashwin knows it and Hainakshi knows it. But what is the simulation, you have to understand. Now, simulation is something where you have to play a role that is an outside world being brought inside the classroom. Now, any of the four experts can take it. I leave it to them for their this, whether Anil, Soumyajit, Sabyasachi or Anita ma'am, anybody can take that. Now, on that session, you'll be basically seeing that a role, from an outside world, a business simulation will take place in the session. Now, how it will work, we will just give you a small example since Soumyajit is here. We would like to just give you a small example. Soumyajit, what I would like you to tell them is, right now in the next 15-20 minutes, you have worked with IBM, correct me?
Yes.
Correct me. Which are the four companies you worked with?
So I have worked with Google, IBM, Accenture, Amazon, and ThoughtWorks now.
Wonderful. Now you have worked with these 5 companies. Now you just quickly, maybe in the next 15 minutes, just tell what are the similarities and differential decision-making process you found in these 5 companies. My question clear?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. So this is the simulation between me and Soumyajit today, that we are trying to understand that in these 5 experiences which Soumyajit had in his last 20 years, what was the different strategic moves on technological plan and the management plan? Seen by him, he will explain it to you. So we are bringing the outside world of Soumyajit into this classroom. Correct, students? Now over to Soumyajit. Yes, Soumyajit.
Sure. So I'll start with Google because that was my first job. And I think initially today in the class also, when I was talking about the origin of Google and how the company started, etc. So what I saw in that organization was how from a small setup, the big thinking led to the company as to where it is, right? Lot of the products that we see in the market today in the advertising and digital world, nobody had even heard of it. For example, the Google AdWords, we all know about it right now, even if you don't know technically, but at least you have heard about it, right? How through advertising can help in monetization and earning revenue is something that I saw and learned in Google, because the largest revenue contributor to Google is through ads revenue. And it is such a huge space that every time somebody clicks on a particular ad, there's a certain amount that kind of goes. It's called the pay-per-click model, right? So this concept was again something very new that Google introduced, right? So from a learning point of view, how one product can be improved, one product can be linked with the various other products. Like for example, it started with AdWords, but then it moved into Google Maps, then it is your Gmail, then your Google Cloud Suite. So you see everything is all integrated, and that's technology, right? So it started with a small technological investment with ads and Google search and revenue. Then it moved into the different parts. So that's how the thought process was. The thought process of the management and the technologists were extremely growth oriented. Their mission was to ensure that how do we solve the problems of the users. I think that problem solving mentality was very important, and that's what it. I mean, technologists are typically very passionate people. This is a common thing I saw in all the 5 companies. But this passion of solving people's problem, I think, was the driver behind Google's success, right? And I think we all know the story today where Google is and how Google is, right? Amazon, to quite an extent, is similar, but to quite an extent, it is very different, right? Similar, why? Because the passion for the users, building something for the users and making their lives easy is something which is very common. But the way they go about doing it is very different from Google. I think the culture is very different in Amazon and Google. For example, in Google, there is something called as a 20% rule, a 20% project rule. So if you are working 8 hours in a day, 20% of your time you can work on something which is not your core job, but something additional where you get to use your creativity to build something. They call it the 20% time in Google, right? And some of the best products and offerings that we see in the market has actually come from those 20% of the time that technologists used to work. Amazon doesn't have that. In fact, Amazon believes that it doesn't matter whether you have 20% time to work on this thing or you 100% something. It believes in, like, there are 14 principles of Amazon, and you can do a Google search and you can actually see what those 14 principles are, right? Amazon, everything that you do, eat, sleep, breath, everything, right, is based on those 14 principles. So every work that you do, whether you send an email, whether you send, like, talk to your, like, seniors, or talk to your technologists, or talk to your management, it has to be based on those principles. The solutions that you're offering, it has to be based on those principles, right? So Amazon is very much in that ecosystem where those principles are the guiding force of the organization, right? IBM, when I was there, I think it was a very interesting time period, around 2015, when IBM, being the 100-year-old plus organization, I think it's one of the giants in the technology world. IBM was the first, like, known face to really, like, bring in the mainframes and the technological revolution in the world, right? So the IBM computer systems, etc. So IBM was going through a huge revolution. IBM was trying to become digitized. IBM was trying to kind of move from the traditional IT and become a more digital, organization, right? Which they are today. They have taken that journey in the last 6-7 years. They're still doing it, but then they have kind of moved in. So in IBM, what I realized was that, while it could be a traditional company, but there was no looking behind when an objective was set to go get it. So the attitude of, like, we want to transform this organization, we want the world to look at IBM in a very different angle altogether. So everybody in the organization started adopting digital, like, at all levels. They did it constantly for 3-4 years at a stretch, and then, like, the company transformed itself into a more of a digital organization than a traditional one, right? So that was IBM. Accenture was a very interesting space, because in Accenture is an IT organization which is service oriented. It is not a product company, it's a services organization. In Accenture, everything is digital. It's an organization where the principle is digital first. And now, if you look at Accenture, they're talking about the next generation of digital, which is the metaverse, right? So
Yes.
Accenture is a pioneer when it comes to conversing or offering its solutions and services in a digital-led world. So digital first is the concept of Accenture. And when Accenture talks about digital, it doesn't only talk about digital marketing. It covers the entire digital space. That is your digital infrastructure, your digital marketing, your digital sales, your digital platforms, everything together. It talks about digital. So that's a big focus of Accenture as an organization. And anything that users, I mean the employees who kind of work on certain projects, or who wants to kind of deliver some sort of solution, has to have the digital first mindset and proceed ahead. A simple example would be and this is something which is a day-to-day thing that used to happen in Accenture, is I'm talking about the pre-COVID days, of course, when we all used to go to the offices, right? So we would be having our canteens and cafeterias, where we would be, in general, what happens, you go and you pay your cash, and then you kind of get it, right? In Accenture, that entire thing was digitally enabled. So even the payment in the cafeteria used to be through a specific app, which was only for Accenture employees. You cannot use it, any other person can't use it. But the ecosystem was such that, they would encourage the employees to use that digital app to make a payment, even to probably have a Maggie or a fried rice from a cafeteria during your lunch, or during your any other time, snacks time, right? So that's how the culture of Accenture is ingrained in the digital first, right? At ThoughtWorks, my current organization, ThoughtWorks is a 28-year-old organization, and it started with being a complete technology organization, where the technologists in the organizations are extremely passionate about solving, again, very similar to Google, solving the problems for the users. The technology community at ThoughtWorks is really focused on tech for good. This is a term which is there in the industry. If you search, you will find technology for good. What are the products you are developing, what are the services you're offering that can actually do good to society. So ThoughtWorks is very strongly focused on delivering tech for good for the society, and ThoughtWorks is very niche in the market that they play. So it's not a mass player, but it would pick up like, small projects which will deliver high quality. For example, if any one of you have used IDFC Bank, or if you have an account with IDFC Bank, or if you have used certain apps, then the digital journey of an user is being developed by ThoughtWorks. I think that is one of the examples I thought I can share with you. So yes, so ThoughtWorks is again like, an org which has a team of passionate like, technologists who really look at like, delivering the good which is like, for the society. So I think these are the few similarities, few like, differences in the different org culture, in the way the companies work through. But one thing which is common across all these organizations is like, thinking the big picture, like, thinking what is going to be the most impactful delivery for your end user, that is, your client, and how you typically go about it, what are your values, right? So I think these are things which are common, yet having certain differences in the way like, the teams operate, is what I would say.
Yeah. So thanks a lot for this simulation which you had explained in a very short fashion. But I also read it, and correct me, Soumyajit, that the 2-year period of COVID which went through, because Accenture was technologically very thoroughly enabled, it took over IBM.
Yes.
Now, if you see on a turnover cycle, IBM stands number 4, and Accenture is the top company today.
Yep.
The basic reason they climbed the ladder when others fell, Accenture climbed. The reason being because everything was technological based.
Yes.
In Accenture. And the only thing which COVID told is if you are technologically strong, you will survive. That is what we learned in COVID. So that is, I think, a classic learning we get from COVID, from these organizations who had been there. IBM, he says, is being there more than 100 years, but he could not see the market changing. They could not see the market going digital. And Accenture saw it, and they reaped the benefit in the last 2 years of COVID. And most of the clients which Accenture bagged in the last 2 years were IBM clients.
Yep.
They did not consider IBM as technologically superb or strong as Accenture, and they lost business to Accenture. So students have to also understand one thing, that you have to keep a necessary balance between a traditional viewpoint and a technological viewpoint. And the basic principle of marketing you should not forget, that is, give the customer what it wants today. Don't play on your past. IBM had a past glory. IBM was a person who had an AI by the name of Watson.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a robot. They had everything with them, but they got disconnected with the market. The result, they could not see COVID coming. Nobody saw COVID coming, but they did not prepare for something which was so highly technical, as Soumyajit has told, that everything was technical oriented. And when you have everything based on technology, then only you survive. And that is what happened in the last 2 years. When everything was online, everything was technological enabled, that was the result. Who is this? That was the result which we all see today, was a survival point of companies. And in future, because COVID has happened, and COVID is going to come in waves, that is what the biologists and the microbiologists are talking, all the more you have to be digital oriented in the future also. So I think it was a wonderful session, Soumyajit, and we did, I think, learn. If students, you have anything to talk or anything to say, please, we have 10 minutes left. You can finish it off, and then we wind up the session. Please, go ahead. I leave it to the floor. Anything. Any question in the chat box? Nothing?
Sir, I have
SEO and Google AdWords be used to alter web ranking artificially. So can SEO and Google AdWords be used to alter the web ranking artificially? Kavita Computers. Yes, Soumyajit, you can take this.
No. So
okay,
definitely do not have an approach of anything that that can alter anything artificially, because you will get severely penalized, right? And again, it's been a challenge in many countries, and India is one of them, where users, they try to kind of out game the system, but the system is too strong, and you cannot do that. So do it the way Google teaches you to do it the way the Google kind of talks about the best practices. The webmasters, they talk about the best practices, and then SEO and Google AdWords can work hand in hand. They are like friends who work hand in hand to ensure that the right kind of messages, right kind of communication goes out, and automatically your search ranking kind of increases. But do not try to do anything ever which can alter it in the short run, or have a mindset that I will take the shortcut and then I will climb onto the top, because once you get penalized, you are gone for life. There is no coming back.
Any other question, madam?
I can see, sir, can you explain about metaverse? Metaverse is nothing but a virtual world. If you imagine yourself in a virtual world, what would that be, right? So you can, for example, let's say we are having a normal regular Zoom meeting here, right? While this is virtual, but if this was metaverse, then maybe we would have certain avatars. Maybe sir would have had certain avatar, I would have had certain avatar, you would have had certain avatar, right? Maybe we would have walked around the room, we would have done a virtual greeting, we would have done a handshake, we would have probably had a virtual coffee, we could have it's more interaction in a virtual world. That's why it is called the metaverse, and the possibilities are endless. Whatever you do it physically is actually possible in the virtual world as well. It's evolving, it will evolve more, but then that's what is metaverse all about.
Anything else, madam? Anything else? Any other question? Over? No questions then?
Hello, sir.
No questions, students? No questions?
Hello, sir.
Great. So I think, Soumyajit, it was really an honor that you were here today. And I think you can get your assignment has been given to the students. What we have decided is, Soumyajit, for the next 3 months, since it's an introductory session, I would like to just tell you, other experts I've already explained. Yes, Anil, I have to explain. Maybe one of the days I will explain, Anil. So what we are planning to do is each students will basically go through the a level of expert assignments as well as the second line assignments. And then what we have kept it, they are being evaluated on that. It's a continuous evaluation process. What we would like your support here is that see, you can give the assignments, and maybe one of the assignments out of the 16 or 2 we will send it to you. You will just evaluate it and tell us the parameters of evaluation of those assignments. Rest, my second line will do the remaining 14 assignment. That is one. Sure. Second, what we would like your support is a Viva. In the month of October, November, we have a Viva. Each students have to go through a Viva process. Now, this Viva process is nothing but an interview of 5 to 10 minutes on the subject that they have learned. Sure. So we are the 5 experts here, and there are about 200 students. So we will be given 20 students each. Now, not only that, Soumyajit, in the Viva, what is going to happen is you have to evaluate not only the students, you have to evaluate the third line and the fourth line also. Yes. The third line and the fourth line faculty will also go through a Viva. Now, a total 20 will be given. What we would like an analysis from you as an expert is students, yes, we evaluate them on their subject knowledge, on what they have learned, on what the assignments they have given. But the faculties, when you are evaluating, you have to basically evaluate the faculties. What is the respective, thinking out of the box angle?
Sure.
Students, I can give them a bit of a freeness that they won't be in 4 months' time. They won't be in a position to, really master the art of thinking out of the box. But third line, fourth line, and the second line faculty, which will go through the Viva process, they will have to basically, master that. Because if the faculties don't think out of the box, then they cannot teach students by thinking out of the box. So that is the evaluation process where I need your support. And of course, we had a wonderful business simulation today, just to show them what they are going to do on 27th, because each student is supposed to do a simulation process, and that is evaluative. So there are 6 points of evaluation in which they are getting 100 marks. Assignment based evaluation, attendance based evaluation. Anywhere where there are less than 20%, let me tell you, they don't get to go for the placement. If they are less than 40%, that means if they get less than 60%, they don't get a certificate from QNX. So this is the way we have, designed this whole process. The basic reason of being, very strong and very strict with them is we want them to attend the classes, because you'll appreciate these courses which they have chosen cannot be learned through an open source. It cannot be learned through a book. It has to be learned this way only, at various application and practical process, the course which they have chosen. And since you have beautifully explained the 5 companies in which you have worked, that it is going to be the future. So we want them to be really thorough in this learning process. That is where we want the expert help. And I think that is where we are looking at it. Next session, whenever it is, I think next session is extended session, right? I think you have taken 3 hours for your next session. Which is the date? We'll just tell you. So next session, I think you have kept 3 hours. I leave it to you what you want to talk, whether you want to touch upon SEO or whether you want to translocate. 22nd is your next session. Whether you want to translocate, the AI or IoT or web or whatever. Sure. That is what 3 hours. Since it is 3 hours, I leave it to you how you want to take it forward. 22nd, which is the date? Friday. Friday. Luckily, I am also there. I will also learn through your sessions. It was really an honor. I learned a lot on the digital space. What I learned today is that whatever they are learning, their application is in the digital field. And that is something which we had to take home from your session today. It was really an honor, Soumyajit, and really very good. And I think in future, our students will learn more from you. Thanks a lot for giving us this time. I know you are traveling out of the country but whatever time that you are in India, and if you are in the time zone, I would like to, take your help. And it is an honor again, once again, that from your tight schedule, you are bringing out this time for QNX. And really in QNX, we are honored for that. Thank you very much, Soumyajit.
It's been an absolute honor here as well. So looking forward to more sessions and more interactions and learning together.
Yes. And as you said, maybe we will, schedule one offline trip for you in the month of October, November. Okay. That is going to be, I think, a trip where we can also have a Viva on the field Viva, where we can call students and faculties. They have to go through the Viva. One more thing, if the faculty don't go through the expert Viva properly, they don't remain a faculty for us. So that has been explained to them. So they are very clear, the faculties, and it is the duty of the faculty to groom students. So we have given the freeness to our faculties also. They can do anything. They can take classes. Second line can take classes anytime in any blended format. But at the end of the day, as you rightly said, if my students are not placeable after 400 hours, there is something seriously gone wrong in the teaching process. So that is what is the evaluation process. And I think we all are thriving and going towards it. Thanks a lot once again. Until unless you have to say anything, you can say. I am open for the next 5 minutes for you. Yeah.
No, I think
your closing remarks.
I think this has been great, and it's an experience for me as well to kind of working with yourself, and also working with all of you, all the students and faculty together. So I'm really looking forward to the next 3-4 months as a part of this entire project and the curriculum.
Yes.
So hopefully, yes, we'll interact more. Hopefully, we should be able to kind of contribute more. I should be able to contribute more. We're looking forward to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Recording stopped. Huh? Yeah. I think they can log